He was not hiding in that hole. He was trying to bury himself alive, just so they would not find him. Liam realized this too late. At the moment, however, all the veteran park ranger saw was a violation of the natural order and a civilian in the throes of a psychotic break. The scene was set in a restricted sector of the Appalachian Ridge, a place marked on the forestry maps with crosshatching that indicated unstable terrain, a bureaucratic euphemism for, "Do not go here." Liam had hiked 3 miles off the main trail, tracking a faint distress signal that had pinged off a tower and vanished. He had not expected to find this. In a small clearing surrounded by dense, suffocating pines, a man was digging. He was not using a shovel. He was using his hands. His fingers were raw, the fingernails torn away, leaving bloody furrows in the dark, compacted soil. He was waist deep in the earth, moving with the frantic, jerky speed of a machine that had stripped its gears. "Sir," Liam barked, his hand instinctively resting on the taser at his belt. "Sir, I need you to stop right now." The man did not even flinch. He scooped a handful of wet clay and slapped it onto his own face, then his neck, plastering the mud over his skin like a second layer of flesh. He was muttering, a low, continuous stream of gibberish that sounded like a prayer to a god of dirt and worms. Liam took a step closer, his boots crunching on the dry needles. The sound was like a gunshot in the stillness. The man in the hole froze. He turned his head slowly. His eyes were wide, rimmed with red, the pupils pinpricks of absolute terror. But he was not looking at Liam. He was looking through him, scanning the tree line. "Cold?" The man whispered. "Need to be cold. Like the ground." "You in shock," Liam said, his voice dropping to the practiced, soothing baritone he used for lost hikers and dehydration cases. "My name is Liam. I am a ranger. I am going to get you out of there, get you warm, and get you home." "No!" The scream tore from the man's throat, ragged and wet. "Not out. In. Deeper." He began to claw at the walls of his self-made grave, pulling clumps of soil down onto his own head. He was hyperventilating, the dirt clogging his nose and mouth. He was suffocating himself. Liam looked at his radio. The protocol was clear. Secure the perimeter, wait for backup, do not engage a potentially violent subject alone. But the backup was an hour away. The sun was dipping below the ridge, casting long, bruised shadows across the clearing. The man was choking, his face turning a mottled purple as he packed the dirt into his own airway. It was not a choice anymore. It was a reaction. "Damn it," Liam hissed. He lunged forward. He grabbed the man by the collar of his ruined flannel shirt. The tourist was surprisingly heavy, anchored by the suction of the mud and the dead weight of his own despair. Liam planted his feet and heaved. The man shrieked, a sound of pure, animalistic betrayal, and thrashed, striking out blindly. His muddy fist connected with Liam's jaw, staggering the ranger, but Liam did not let go. Adrenaline flooded his system. With a roar of effort, he wrenched the man up and out of the hole, dragging him onto the bed of pine needles. "It's over," Liam shouted, pinning the man's chest to the ground with his knee to stop the flailing. "You safe. Do you hear me? You are safe." The man stopped fighting instantly. He did not relax, he went rigid. He looked up at Liam, tears cutting tracks through the mud on his face. He did not look grateful. He looked like a man who had just watched the guillotine blade detach. "You fool," the man whispered, his voice trembling with a horror so profound it made Liam's stomach turn. "You let the heat out. You broke the seal." Liam ignored the cryptic accusation, attributing it to hypoxia or drug-induced psychosis. He reached for his radio, keying the mic to call in the extraction. "Dispatch, this is Unit 4. I have the subject. He is combative but secured. Requesting immediate medical assist at coordinates." Static, not the rhythmic crackle of a bad signal, but a heavy, oppressive silence. The little light on the radio did not even flicker. Liam tapped the device, frowned, and checked the battery. Dead. He checked his GPS unit. The screen was black. Electronics do not work when they get close, the man said. He was lying perfectly still now, his eyes darting frantically to the darkening trees. Too much energy. Or maybe they just dampen it. I do not know. I just know they hate the noise. Who? Liam asked, keeping his weight on the man's chest but loosening his grip slightly. Who are you hiding from? Is there someone else out here? Not someone. The man wheezed. Something. Let me go. Please. If I get back in, maybe I can cover up before the temperature rises. Liam shook his head, standing up and hauling the man to his feet. He cuffed the tourist's hands behind his back. Standard procedure for a combative rescue. We re-moving. The trailhead is 3 miles east. If we hustle, we can get to the ATV before full dark. We would not make it 10 yards, the man said. He was not fighting anymore. He was vibrating, a tremor running through his entire body. You do not understand. I was cold. The mud, it hides the heat. It hides the life. Walk, Liam ordered, shoving him gently toward the path. As they took their first steps away from the hole, Liam felt it. It was not a sound. It was the absence of one. The Appalachian woods were never silent. There was always the wind in the canopy, the chitter of squirrels, the drone of insects, the distant call of a crow. But now the world had been muted. The air felt thick, stagnant, and unnaturally still. It was as if the forest itself was holding its breath. Then the smell hit him. It was not the smell of pine or damp earth. It was a musk, sharp, copper-tangy, and old. It smelled like a wet dog that had been rolling in spoiled meat. Oh God! The tourist whimpered. He dropped to his knees, refusing to walk. They here. You lit a beacon, you stupid bastard. You lit a beacon. Get up. Liam grabbed the man's arm, his own heart starting to hammer against his ribs. The primitive part of his brain, the part that had kept his ancestors alive on the savannah, was screaming at him to run. Predator. Predator nearby. Look, the man whispered. Look at the trees. Liam looked. At first, he saw nothing but the dense wall of trunks fading into the twilight gloom. Then one of the pale birch trunks moved. It was not a tree. It stepped out from the shadows, unfolding itself like a spider. It was tall, impossibly tall, perhaps 7 feet, and painfully thin. Its skin was the color of a maggot, pale and translucent, stretched tight over bone and sinew. It was naked, human-shaped, but lacking any humanity. Its arms hung down past its knees, ending in long, blackened fingers that twitched in the air. Liam's hand went to his holster. He drew his service pistol, the weight of the steel the only comforting thing in a world gone wrong. Federal Ranger, he shouted, his voice cracking slightly. Stand down. Put your hands where I can see them. The creature did not react to the voice. It did not have ears that Liam could see. Its head was a smooth, elongated dome. Where a face should have been, there was only a slit of a mouth filled with needle teeth, and above it, nothing. No nose, no eyes, just smooth, pale skin. The tourist began to sob, a high, keen sound. It sees the heat, he blubbered. It sees the heat. The creature's head snapped toward them, tilted, tasting the air. Then, from the darkness behind it, 2 more shapes emerged. They moved with a fluid, liquid grace, silent as smoke. Liam realized with a jolt of nausea that he had made a fatal error. He had pulled the man from the cold, insulating earth. He had forced him to exert himself, to pump hot, oxygenated blood through his veins. He had turned the man into a lighthouse of thermal energy in the middle of a cold, dark ocean. The standoff lasted only seconds, but to Liam, it felt like hours. He held his weapon trained on the center mass of the lead creature, his finger taking up the slack on the trigger. Back off, Liam roared. He fired a warning shot into the dirt near the creature's feet. The gunshot was deafening, shattering the unnatural silence. The muzzle flash was bright in the gloom. The creature did not flinch at the noise. It recoiled from the flash, the sudden burst of heat, hissing like a steam valve. They are blind, Liam realized. They navigate by thermal signatures. The mud? Liam whispered, the realization hitting him like a physical blow. You were masking your body temperature. I told you, the tourist wept. He was huddled in a ball at Liam's feet, trying to make himself small. I told you. The creatures adjusted. They realized the flash was temporary. They turned their faceless heads back toward the two men. The leader crouched, its muscles coiling under that translucent skin. It was not looking at Liam. It was focused entirely on the tourist, the man who was hyperventilating, sweating, radiating panic and heat. Liam stepped in front of the man, acting as a shield. I would not let them take you, he said, though he did not believe it. He fired 3 rounds, aiming for the leader's chest. Bang, bang, bang. The bullets hit with wet thuds. Black fluid sprayed from the creature's torso. It stumbled back, letting out a shriek that sounded like grinding metal. But it did not fall. It did not seem to feel pain, only annoyance. The wounds began to knit together, the pale skin closing up like melting wax. The other 2 creatures flanked them, moving with terrifying speed. They were hurting them. Run! Liam yelled, grabbing the tourist's collar again. Back to the rocks. He tried to drag the man, but the tourist was dead weight. And then the strategy of the pack became clear. The wounded leader lunged, not to kill, but to separate. A long, bone-like arm swept out, backhanding Liam with the force of a sledgehammer. Liam flew backward. The air left his lungs. He slammed into the trunk of a pine tree and crumpled to the ground, his pistol skittering away into the darkness. His vision blurred, swimming with stars. He gasped, trying to inhale, but his diaphragm was paralyzed. Through the haze, he saw the creatures descend. They ignored him. Liam was still, his breathing shallow, his body going into shock, cooling down. But the tourist was screaming, thrashing, pumping heat into the air. The lead creature grabbed the tourist by the legs. The man shrieked as the long fingers dug into his flesh, likely severing arteries. There was no sadism in the movement, only efficiency. The other 2 creatures grabbed his arms. They lifted him off the ground as easily as a child lifts a doll. Liam! The man screamed, his voice breaking. Help me! Please! Put me back in the hole! Liam tried to push himself up, but his limbs would not obey. He watched, helpless, as the pale shapes turned and carried the struggling, screaming man into the darkness of the trees. They did not eat him there. They were taking him somewhere warm, somewhere intended for keeping things fresh. The screams faded quickly, swallowed by the unnatural density of the forest. Then silence returned. Absolute, crushing silence. Liam was alone. The cold was seeping into his bones. He realized with a detached horror that the creatures were not gone. He could feel the pressure in the air. One of them had stayed behind. Liam lay paralyzed against the tree roots, his chest burning with every shallow breath. He could not see the 4th creature, but he could sense it. It was nearby, scanning, waiting for a spike in temperature, waiting for him to panic, to run, to heat up. He slowly turned his head. 5 feet away lay the hole, the grave the tourist had dug. It was a jagged wound in the earth, dark and inviting. The soil there was deep, damp, and freezing. The creature stepped into the clearing. It was smaller than the others, perhaps a scout. It swept its head back and forth, the eyeless face twitching. It was confused. Liam's shock had lowered his heart rate, and the cold ground was masking his signature. But as the shock wore off, his adrenaline would spike. He would warm up, and then it would see him. He had to move. Now, moving meant generating heat. It was a paradox. To survive, he had to risk death. Liam grit his teeth. He did not stand up. He did not run. He slithered. He dragged himself across the pine needles, inch by agonizing inch, keeping his body pressed flat against the cold earth. The creature's head snapped toward the sound of rustling needles. It took a step closer, unhinging its jaw to reveal rows of serrated bone. It hissed, tasting the air for the warmth of prey. Liam was 3 feet from the hole. 2 feet. The creature screeched, a sound of discovery. It had found his thermal trail, crouched to spring. Liam threw himself forward, tumbling over the lip of the excavation. He fell 4 feet, landing heavily on the wet clay. He did not cry out. He did not gasp. He instantly curled into a fetal position, jamming his face into the mud, pulling the loose, freezing soil over his legs, his back, his neck. He buried himself. Above him, he heard the heavy thud of the creature landing at the edge of the pit. Dirt showered down on him. He felt the vibration of its footsteps circling the hole. It was right there. If he breathed too loudly, the heat of his exhalation would rise like smoke. Liam held his breath until his lungs burned. He pressed his body into the clay until the cold was a physical pain, numbing his skin, slowing his heart. Be the dirt, he thought. Be the dead thing. The creature paced above him for an eternity. It sniffed loudly, confused by the sudden disappearance of the prey. It swiped at the air, its claws clicking. Then, after what felt like hours, the footsteps moved away. The presence receded. The oppressive weight lifted from the air. Liam did not move. He lay there in the grave, shivering violently, hypothermia setting in, but he welcomed the cold. The cold was life. As he lay there, entombed in the mud, his mind began to connect the dots, and the final, terrible realization washed over him, colder than the earth. He remembered the briefing files, the restricted zones that changed seasonally without explanation, the high number of disappearances in this specific sector, always attributed to animal attacks or exposure. He remembered the way his superiors had dismissed the rumors of strange sightings, laughing them off too quickly, too loudly. They knew. The Forest Service. The search and rescue coordinators. Someone up the chain knew exactly what lived in these woods. They knew these things hunted by heat. They knew the boundaries of their territory. And they did not close the park. They just managed the herd. Liam realized why the map was crosshatched. It was not to keep people out for their safety. It was to funnel the stragglers, the lone hikers, the risk-takers into a specific area. A feeding ground. A way to keep the ecosystem balanced so they would not venture into the towns. The tourist had not been crazy. He had